Tonight, new lockdowns in Europe to curb COVID-19. Dow Jones crashes 900 plus points. New Canadian studies show increase in depression and anxiety. 7 people taken to the hospital after a Trump rally. All this and more on a special edition of the Boland Report for Wednesday, October the 28th, 2020. Welcome to the show. My name is Eric, and we've got tons of COVID-19 updates. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced a second national lockdown until at least the end of November. The president said that under the new measures, starting on Friday, people will only be allowed to leave home for essential work or medical reasons. Non-essential business such as restaurants and bars will be closed, but schools and factories will remain open. COVID daily deaths in France are at the highest level since April. On Tuesday, 33,000 new cases were confirmed. The president said the country risks being overwhelmed by the second wave that no doubt will be harder than the first. Meanwhile, Germany will impose an emergency lockdown that is less severe but includes the closure of restaurants, gyms, and theaters. Infections are rising sharply across Europe, including the UK on Wednesday, which announced 310 new deaths and 24,000 new officially recorded cases. In England, a new study estimated that 100,000 people are actually catching the virus every day, with researchers warning that something has to change. Knife curfews are in force in several countries, including 46 million people in France. News of the new restrictions being introduced in Europe's biggest economy has led to sharp falls in financial markets on Wednesday. The UK FTSE 100 ended almost 2.6 lower, and the Germany DAX dropped 4.2%. Major U.S. index also sank 3.4% or more. We're deep in the second wave, European Commission President said. I think that this year Christmas will be a different Christmas. In a televised address on Wednesday, the French president said that France must now brutally apply the brakes to avoid being submerged by the accelerating of the pandemic. The virus is circulating at a speed not even the most president forecast has expected. He said that adding that half of the ICU beds in French hospital were being occupied by COVID patients. The president said under the new rules, people will need to fill out a form to justify leaving their homes, as required in the initial lockdowns in March. Social gatherings are banned. Like in the spring, you will only be able to leave your house only for work, for medical appointments, to provide assistance to a relative, to shop for essential goods, or to go for a walk near your house, the president said. But he made clear that public services and factories will remain open, adding the economy must not stop or collapse. The president added visits to care homes, which were banned during a 2-month lockdown declared in March, would be permitted under the latest measures. The curbs will apply until December 1st and will be reassessed every 2 weeks. The president has retained hope that families will be able to be reunited for Christmas. The situation in Europe, where the coronavirus infection is serious and alarming, and the bloc must be more efficient with testing, contact tracing, vaccine, and quarantine policies, the EU Council said. We need more efficiently by intercepting the virus before citizens infect each other. We need strong planning, otherwise we will have systematic lockdowns in the coming months. Charles Michael told Italian Daily in an interview published Wednesday. On Wednesday, large swaths of the public life for a month while France prepare to tighten control further as COVID-19 surges across the region and financial markets stumble likely at the cost of the second lockdown. German Chancellor met state premiers in a video conference and agreed to a partial lockdown of bars, restaurants, sports, and trade fairs closing from November 2nd to November 30th. Subject rallies in Prague to protest the restrictive measures imposed by the government. A day earlier, the nation's hit a record 15,663 corona cases. On Wednesday, a nationwide curfew will begin and all stores will be closed on Sundays. The U.S. stock fell sharply on Wednesday amidst concerns the latest increase in coronavirus infections and its impact on the economy. 943 cases, 224 points, or 3.4%, to 26,000, 5,019, posting its fourth straight negative session. The S&P 500 slid 3.5%, while the Nasdaq fell 3.7%. The Dow and the S&P 500 both suffered their worst day since June 11. The U.S. index took their cue from European market benchmark, 4.2%, the lowest since late May. The London closed 2.6% lower. U.S. coronavirus cases have risen by a record daily average of 71,832 over the past week, data compiled by Johns Hopkins University shows. Meanwhile, coronavirus-related hospitalization are up 5% or more in 3 dozen states, according to data from COVID. All major stock markets fell hugely, trigger narrow sell-off in the U.S. stock market and Germany in partial lockdowns. It's not just concern that Europe. It is not just Europe that is a concern. Wall Street is also eyeing the record U.S. optimism that the surging cases were moving in tandem with more testing. The only economic data of note released on Wednesday was crude oil investors, which demonstrated an unexpected build of 4 million barrels. Although the European lockdown sent crude prices falling, the commodity extended its losses to 6% interest rate. Energy sector outlook, which has a fair share of turmoil this year. ABC Washington poll showing that the growing anti-Trump sentiment in the state. The university poll also shows the Biden a 5-point lead up to initiating the red state. Effort to curb the spread of the COVID-19 through social distancing and lockdowns had kept the Canadian caseload relatively low compared to other jurisdictions globally. But the overall health of the population had deteriorated over the last 8 months, with more people turning to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and screen time over physical exercise. Canadian society, both directly and indirectly, Public Health Officer Dr. Theresa Tam said on Wednesday as she released her agency annual report. Those findings are care homes, epicenter of COVID-19 deaths because the pandemic preparedness did not extend into those settings. The report said the long-term people of color in Canada have been more likely to contract the virus. found more than 100 illicit drug toxicity deaths per month for 6 consecutive months from March to August 2020, with more than 175 such deaths each month. For study 6 in June. First Nation people accounted for the huge number of those deaths. They were nearly 6 times more likely to die from overdose than other BC residents. In July, BC paramedics responded to a record high number of overdose crises, a 35% spike. Calls in previous reported 11 2018. The use of alcohol came pandemic. Alcohol consumption was up 19%. Marijuana jumped 8.3%, and tobacco smoking rate were up by 3.9%. CBC North has used in Canada, Northern Territory, linked in part to more bootlegging and access programs. In 2018, 68% of Canadians aged 15 and over reported up to 54% in late March and early April 2020, according to SAC Canada's. Disabled and low-income more suicidal. Social distancing measures and limits on social gatherings in place. Their friendship and family relationships. While thousands of people have died from COVID-19, nearly 80% were in long-term. In general, this year than last. Increase in numbers of deaths compared to the same period. Directly linked to COVID-19 cannot be excluded. Hospital has also for other medical in the emergency room due to restrictions, and health professionals fear that people may be avoiding necessary medical care because of pandemic-related worries. And rec sports leagues on active before, even less active. Spending more time using the internet and watching TV during the pandemic in early April. To physically isolate may also have an impact on mental health. Research has shown that people were able to more likely to report excellent or very good mental health. Before we head into a quick break, here's the latest economic updates for today. Let's take a view of that. to the show. At least 7 people were taken to hospital after an airport rally for President Trump that drew thousands, many of whom who were left stranded for several kilometers from their parked cars in freezing weather. Omaha police said in a written statement that the first responder dealt with 30 people for medical reasons throughout the day. Reported that some people suffer adverse as they waited for a shuttle bus or away. The distance from the event back Michael Pench, a spokesperson for the Omaha police, said in a statement. Most of the thousands who attended the Tuesday night rally at Omaha Airfield parked in remote lots and were shuttled to the event in buses. Police said 40 buses were used to shuttle 25,000 people to the event over a 10-hour period starting at 10 a.m. Although the undisclosed number for the left before the rally became sterile, and the awaiting buses, which can hold about 50 riders each, were overwhelmed when the crowd left the event at 9 p.m. Police said additional court judge has ruled Tuesday that the Canadian government won't be going to a trial for climate change, striking down a lawsuit brought by 15 young Canadians who argued that the government were violating their charter rights. Federal Court Justice Michael Mason rejected a lawsuit started by the youth, aged 10 to 19 years old. Their case were called on the court to compel Ottawa to develop a science-based climate recovery plan, but Mason said ruled that the claims don't have a reasonable cause of action or a chance of success, so the case cannot proceed to trial. The lawsuit filed in Canada failure to protect climate change is a violation of the youth charter. Climate change is too broad for the courts to grapple with, and the courts have no role in reviewing the country's overall approach to climate change.
Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report and what the American people are allowed to hear? And why do you persist in behaving as a Democratic super PAC, silencing
And his social media platform Twitter account and censored links to the outlet stories on Biden's son Hunter and an overseas business dealing. Dorsey said this was due to a policy regarding hacked material because the stories were based on emails from Hunter Biden's laptop. Cruz notes a New York Times article about President Trump's tax return did not face the same treatment, even though the material appeared to be leaked illegally. Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you, and who put you in? People are allowed to tweeted from being alongside. Later in the hearing, Senator Ron Johnson said it does not affect elections with their policies. Either are true, Johnson asked Dorsey and Zuckerberg. When we come back, the latest numbers from the pandemic. Welcome back to the show. Ontario reported 5 additional deaths and 834 new COVID cases on Wednesday, bringing the total active cases in the province to 26,478 cases. The province reported that 312 people were in hospital, with 71 in ICU. Premier Doug Ford also asked the city public health officials to come up with a plan for gyms to safely reopen. Mayor John Tory said he wants a general reopening strategy in place when Toronto is scheduled to move out of Stage 2 on November 7th. As winter approaches and people are cooped up inside, Tory said gyms are very important because he said including 89 ICU. The province is entering another 4 weeks partial lockdown. The fitness center their members to protest the province guidelines by gatherings while respecting social distancing rules in front of their respective activity center. On Wednesday, they backed off their threats to defy red zone restriction. Deputy Premier stated that the province will still go ahead with new decree to allow fines for owners who reopen their gyms as well as their customers. As of 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, Canada has 225,586 confirmed or preemptive COVID cases, with 26,687 of those active. Province and territory listed 188,867 as recovered or resolved. A WNews tally of deaths based on the provincial health regional information and WNews reporting stood at about 10,032 cases. Canada reports that a community with the most visible minority had the highest mortality rate during the first wave of the COVID-19. Nearly 8,000 people had died in the first wave of the pandemic in Canada, 94% of them in Quebec and Ontario. This report shows that more evidence that the pandemic is affecting visible minority who are housing and work. In March and July, death rates from COVID-19 were twice as high in communities where more than 1 in 4 people identify as physically minority, compared to the community where less than 1% of the residents did. In Ontario and Quebec, the rates were 3.5 times higher in communities where more than 1/4 of the residents identify as physical minority, according to SAC Canada. Public health officials have declared an outbreak of a senior assistant place in Surrey and another in the interior. This brings the total number in long-term care home or assisted living includes 2 deaths linked to an outbreak at Edmonton General Care Center. A man in his 80s and a woman in her 90s. The third death was a man in his 80s in the Edmonton zone, and the fourth was a woman in her 90s linked to an outbreak at Mount Royal, Calgary. Health Minister Jim Ritters addressed Saskatchewan growing case number with new restrictions for Saskatoon. Starting Friday, consumption outdoor. Newfoundland chief health official people with single symptoms would be able to get tested if that symptom was either a new or worsening cough or fever. There's no new in the north. There was no new confirmed cases in the Yukon or Nunavut. In Northwest Territory, officials reported a possible positive case, but said a statement to public health had no determined there was no risk to public, as the individual had been self-isolating appropriately since returning from travel. Global cases has spiked. A database maintained by US-based Johns Hopkins University tracking COVID-19 cases has stood at more than 44 million cases around the world as of Wednesday morning, with more than 29.8 million considered resolved. The number of deaths reported around the world stood around more than 1.1 million. In the Americans, nearly half the people have contracted the COVID-19 in the United States over the last 7 days, according to the new tally. Cases and hospitality set records in the Midwest. State health officials say the new COVID-19 report shows an increase in cases and hospitality throughout Washington. It had not brought under control. Officials said a spike could jeopardize progress towards reopening schools, straining the healthcare system, and increase risk during the holiday season. Estimates show that each COVID-19 patient is affecting 1.34 others on average in Western Washington. Eastern Washington, the average is 1.12. The goal is a number below 1, which means COVID-19 transmission declining, officials said. A member of the White House Corona Task Force said the increase in COVID cases isn't just because of more testing. Admiral Brett said the proof is an increase in dinner of 35 people in Johannesburg last weekend. He said that the president is not showing any symptoms, and the guest who tested positive is getting medical care in the South African. South Africa is the hardest hit country in Africa with nearly 718,000 reported cases and more than 19,000 deaths. In the Asia Pacific region, India tally confirmed coronavirus moved closer to 8 million with 43,893 new cases reported in the last 24 hours. Records of COVID infections and deaths. I want to say thank you for watching the Boland Report, and we hope we